All right, welcome to our daily Sports Talk ATL Braves podcast. I'm Chase Earl at Sports Talk ATL Twitter, joined by Logan Wundy at L Wundy on Twitter. Logan, how are you doing today? This is our first podcast. I don't think we could have picked a worse day to start it on because I think that was the most frustrating Braves loss of the season.
I would have to agree with you. It was probably the most frustrating game.
Like the ones on against the Cardinals where we blew those back-to-back nights, at least it's against a good team. The ones against the
Yeah,
Mets,
yeah,
at least
yeah.
there's some good teams. Even the Phillies, there's been some frustrating losses, and I can't put my fingers on all of them. But just for what today meant, when you look at the Mets, their run coming up against a string of just absolutely awful teams, like they're probably going to go 15-5. So making up some ground, you really need to do it when them play the Dodgers tonight. They lose. You have an opportunity after opportunity. I think we went 2 for 14 or 2 for 15 with runners in scoring position.
Yeah,
Probably
something like
even
that.
worse with runners on. And then you look back at the first inning of that game. We have bases loaded, one out. Travis d'Arnaud swings at 2 balls. And I just think if we score there, maybe the floodgates open early. Urania, who's been awful all year, struggles. And guess what? We probably win by 10 runs. Instead, we don't, and it just changes the whole complexion of the game.
Yeah, 100%. Like in the first inning, we needed to capitalize right there. No, or what is it? 1 out, bases loaded. 1 out, bases loaded, and we just do nothing.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Don't even put it in play, I don't think.
no, I think it was 2 strikeouts, and then it just what just pisses you off is Travis d'Arnaud, which I don't have his walk rate pulled up, but I know it's like next to
No.
nothing.
He
Like the
probably
guy
has
just,
3 walks on the
yeah,
year.
the guy just refuses to walk, and Urania, who's walked 2 guys in front to walk the bases loaded, can't hit the strike zone, has him down 3-1, throws 2 balls, and he swings, and the second one is 8 feet out of the strike zone. Like it's not
Yeah.
even in the realm of possibility of what should be swung at, and I just think we score there, floodgates open. We win by 5, 6, 7 runs. This game,
Oh,
we have a singing a totally different tune. Instead, we're here talking about a loss. Max Fried struggled tonight. Do you have any thoughts on him? I mean, his velocity was down. It just wasn't his best stuff for sure.
it might be just the fact of it's getting to where he's pitched a lot of games in general, and so it's kind of maybe he hasn't got a super long break. I guess he's just coming off of a break, but maybe it's just something that I don't know. Hopefully, it's just this one game where it was just he gave up 7 hits and 3 earned runs, which is not a Max Fried night at all. I just
Yeah, his control with his curveball and his fastball, fastball velocity was down. I guess that's something to look for in his next start, but
mhm.
that just sometimes happen. I know every time that happens, people want to throw, oh, is something wrong? Is something wrong? Hopefully not, but it could have just been a start thing. Really, what surprised me was his control. His curveball
Mhm.
control was awful. He couldn't throw it for a strike, and when he did throw it for a strike, it was right over the middle of the plate, and the Rockies just took advantage.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, it was a struggle all night for Swanson. Um, the bullpen actually did perform really well, despite us bringing in pretty much all of our bottom guys. I mean, I think it was what Jay Jackson, Kirby Yates, Tyler Matzik, and Dylan Lee. So didn't pitch any of our top guys. Typical Brian Snicker move, but it actually worked out. They pitched really well. I thought Dylan Lee was going to give me a heart attack there and not give us an opportunity, but we were bailed out.
I mean, yeah, we had after those guys get or pitched through those innings perfectly. We had a chance with Dansby Swanson, Michael Harris, and Austin Riley in the ninth to give us at least 1 run, and they all just
Yeah, and that was
we
pretty much the whole game. The
yeah.
whole game, what 2 for 14 runners in scoring position, guys, runners and thirds all over the place, bases loaded in the first inning. It was just, probably the most for. I mean, we have 7 hits. I'm surprised we only had 7 hits. It felt like we had a lot more. I bet you we drew. We had
Yeah.
4 walks,
Oh
11
yeah,
base
yeah.
hits, but it felt like we were on base a lot more than that. But
Hmm.
super frustrating game from the offense, and one I think there were some people on Twitter talking to me about, are we going to fall out of the wild card race, freaking out because we've lost 3 out of 4 games and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, it's baseball. Like,
this happens.
4 games ago, we're talking about we're the hottest team in baseball. I think we won 13 out of 15 or 12 out of 14. And now you lose 3 out of 4. And people are like, oh my God, 2 of which came on the road in St. Louis. It's
But
Braves Twitter in a nutshell.
that's probably every fan base in a nutshell. But
Yeah, I know, but I guess I don't know. I will say one thing that Braves fan country does have. They have great fans. They have a great
Hmm.
Twitter fan base. They're very engaged. But what comes with that is a lot of overreactions and
Oh
just
yeah,
like freaking out. I mean, listen,
it's
I'll
magnified.
admit that this if there was ever a game to be frustrated about, given the circumstances, given how late we are in the seasons, 3 games behind the Mets lose. This is one to be frustrated about. But I mean, talking about oh man, now we can't win. Now we're just swinging for the fences, all that stuff. That just needs to be, watered
Yeah.
down. It's all good. Like we were the hottest team in baseball 4 days ago. It's baseball,
The
and we've
one
done
thing
this
I
all
always
season.
Yeah, the one thing I always see when we like lose a game like this is everybody comes out and starts saying that they're only swinging for the fences, they're only swinging to hit home runs, nothing, nothing, nothing. And then the next game we'll go out and get 10, 11 hits, and it'll be like, oh, we're fine again. Like,
Yeah, I mean I mean, first of all, listen, and I say this all the time. The Braves do one thing better than every other team pretty much in baseball, and that's hit bombs. So like we're not going to change our approach completely. I agree situationally. Like there'll be times where hey maybe we just need a base hit or slap the ball the other way or something or nothing can get going. You got to change your approach. But for the most part, in most situations of the game, we're not going to change our approach. We're going to try to hit
mhm,
bombs. So like we strike out a lot, but we also hit a lot of homers. That's just how
mhm.
we play. That's how we played. It's not going to change.
Yeah, no, it with that is the highlight of being a Braves fan is you get to watch the most home runs in a season pretty much every year.
Yeah, I mean 1 through 9, every game, every player can change the game in a swing of the bat. That's why we won the World Series. And if you look at what wins championships these days, it's the team that hits the most home runs. And you look at what wins individual games, it's usually the team that hits the most home runs.
Hmm.
So one thing I do want to bring up, one thing about the game, and then a couple things about some things that happened earlier in the day in Jesse Chavez and Ozzie Albies. But the thing about the game, Ronald Acuna sits out for his third straight game. And there were several opportunities in this game where he could have been used. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on how you feel about Acuna moving forward because I know they said, hey, he's available for a pinch hit, but obviously that's not true because if he was, he would have pinch hit at some point in
Hmm.
this game. So how comfortable are you feeling about Acuna moving forward, and what are your thoughts there?
So I saw this one just a random reply today, and it was this guy. It was like, I'm more worried about the short term rather than the long term, because in the short term it's going to be nagging, it's going to keep going, and then he's going to get the off season, and he's going to be able to have time to heal and rest up, and he'll be fine for 2023. But this year I am a little worried about it going heading into the playoffs because it keeps nagging consistently throughout this whole season. So I'm a little worried he might miss time in the playoffs, and that is kind of a big deal because we do need him.
Yeah, I think my biggest worry is, I guess, in the short term, is like obviously there is a lot of pain there, or else he would be playing. He wants to be out there. I just think he's one tweak away, like one actual tweak from like, hey, like we're just going to shut this thing down. I mean, you saw them do it with Dansby a couple years ago, and as much as I love Dansby and he's having a fantastic year, Dansby's not nearly as valuable long term as Ronald Acuna. So if there is any reason that would suggest like, hey, maybe some long term damage could happen, which nothing obviously has come up yet. That's really where my biggest concern is because they're going to shut him down for the rest of the season. And unlike last year's team that had Freddie Freeman and was able to bounce back, like I think that's a blow this year's team won't be able to overcome. Even though I think this year's team is better, it just last year's team had some magic to it. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the short term is what we have to worry about. And I really expect to see them take it easy on Acuna this month of September, especially if we don't cut things close with the Mets very soon. I think you could see them pretty much give them, a couple days off a week, DH him a lot more, stuff like that. But something that could determine a lot of what they do with Acuna, because it's another guy who could be used in the DH role when he comes back from injury. Ozzie Albies, he's back in September. He'll be back September 1st with his rehab assignment. Um, I would say 2 weeks is probably a good timetable when he'll be back in Atlanta. But how do you see him fitting into this team with Vaughn Grissom, who played again really well tonight? Do you see him using him as a DH? I mean, Eddie Rosario hasn't played well. Maybe they do both. How do you see this all mixing in? Maybe they move Vaughn Grissom out to left field.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have, obviously, because that means more depth. But when Albies gets back, I assume they're going to play him at start him at DH a little bit, kind of like they did Acuna, and then see how he's feeling there, and then maybe have him and Vaughn kind of switch in and out. He starts getting more reps at second base, maybe, and then see we just plug Vaughn Grossman wherever we can to get his bat in the lineup. Is pretty much where I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be. It's hard to tell because we don't know how Ozzy's going to come back. I mean, if Ozzy come back and struggles, like as much as I would love to see him in the lineup, he's probably doesn't really have a place unless he can get his feet under him and he starts hitting like he usually does. I think the biggest thing is if Ozzy can play in the field, he's definitely be playing second base. Vaughn Grissom, as good as he's been at the plate, hasn't been as good defensively. I think he's got some work there. I mean, he's fine, but he's no Ozzie Albies, that's for
No.
sure. I do think you could see them try Vaughn Grissom in left field. He's definitely an athlete. And let's be honest, Eddie Rosario, one, he's not hitting well. Two, it's not like Eddie Rosario is a Gold Glove outfielder out there. He's not Adam Duvall. He's not Michael Harris. He is much closer to Marcell Ozuna than those two players. And at the end of the day, I think Vaughn Grissom probably could be as good as Eddie out there. So really, you play the hot hand in terms of the bats, but too early for me to talk too much about that because it really depends how Ozzy comes back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, if Ozzy does come back, I'm doing a hypothetical right here. Like if Ozzy does come back and does good in the field, and we put Vaughn in left field, say he does okay or whatever. I mean, having Eddie Rosario or Robbie Grossman as like a platoon DH, which isn't amazing, but or just Robbie Grossman if he keeps it up by himself, that's not a bad situation in general.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even really talked about Robbie Grossman, and he's been really good for Atlanta. I kind of always sweep him under the rug because I think of the star power and what 80 gave us last year. But right now, if you ask me, I needed an at bat for my life. I'm probably putting Robbie Grossman out there instead of Eddie Rosario. So he's definitely in the mix too. And listen, we've seen in the past Ozzy crushes lefties, kind of struggles against righties. They could platoon hit base kind of like that. So there's a lot of different ways they could go. And like you said, it's a great problem to have. There's very few teams that would even be thinking about sitting a guy like Eddie Rosario or Vaughn Grissom or Ozzie Albies come October. But the Braves, as far as depth goes, is the best team in baseball. I don't think it's close, to be honest, offensively. The last thing I wanted to talk about, Jesse Chavez. I'm a huge Jesse Chavez fan.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've written like 3 articles in the last like 3 weeks, kind of talking about, hey, like it's not impossible we could get him back. It's not impossible. It just seems like he was born to be a Brave. And guess what? He gets released by the Angels. I write an article. Should we pick him up? Within 24 hours, he's a Brave again. What are your thoughts on Jesse Chavez? How do you think how he slots into this bullpen moving forward?
That is a trick. It's kind of tricky because we got to fit everybody in, but we also don't. My thing is heading into the playoffs. I don't necessarily know if I see Kirby Yates sticking in there just because of how much he struggled. Unless he goes off, obviously. Unless he goes off, then 100% keep him in there. But maybe him taking over a spot like that, or because we still got Darren O'Day. We don't know how he's going to come back, obviously. So we've got him, Jesse Chavez in there. I mean, obviously Jay Jackson's in there right now, so one of them probably taking over that spot.
Jay Jackson, I assume, will probably go to the minors.
Yeah.
I think you're looking at kind of a 4-way. Jesse Chavez will be up when the rosters expand on September 1st. He'll definitely be up. I think Jay Jackson goes to the minors. You have Jackson Stevens. He'll come back from his concussion IL. I think it really comes down to Stevens, Chavez, O'Day, and who else is that? I don't want to say Lee because I feel like Lee's done enough to be locked in. It might just be those 3. Oh, and Yates. I think those 4, all pitching from the right-handed side. I think they're going to be vying for 2 spots. So with the expanded rosters, they'll all probably get an opportunity. I expect to see Jesse Chavez up first. Jay Jackson could be replaced at any moment. But with the expanded rosters, they'll all get an opportunity. I think it comes down to 2 of those guys will get in for 4 spots.
Okay. Yeah.
And it could be it could also be 5 if Odorizzi doesn't make a playoff roster or something like that, and Soroka doesn't come back. So there's also some variables in that regard.
Yeah, and then you have to add Ian Anderson in there if you really wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys, man. There's a lot of, I mean, and to be honest, I'm a big fan of Kyle Muller. I
Yes.
really think Kyle Muller could come along at some point. I mean, he's been great in AAA. The last time he was in the majors for the Marlins was really good.
Hmm.
And I think we'll see him in September too. So it's going to
Hmm.
be, I mean, it's a great thing to have,
Yes.
competition, and the best 26 guys will make it. We've seen the Braves over the last couple seasons. It's always crazy to me how these postseason rosters get put together, because you'll see a guy like Tucker Davidson, who hadn't made a start in forever, gets put
Hmm.
on the World Series postseason roster and makes a start. Kyle Wright doesn't know, April doesn't pitch till April, but they're like, hey, he's got a better shot at helping us succeed than a guy who's been here all season, like a Josh Tomlin or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Jackson Stevens,
Drew
maybe in this
Smiley.
case. Yeah, so it's just crazy. Like it's not just cookie cut. Like just
Hmm.
because guys have been here doesn't mean they're going to make that postseason roster. So I think you're going to see a lot of competition, not just in the major league level, but AAA too, for these final spots.
Yeah. And we may see
Yeah,
some surprises that we didn't expect either. So I don't know. We'll find out when that time comes.
yeah, and I'm sure that'll be something we'll talk about in a lot
Hmm.
more further episodes, guys. That wraps up this episode of our first. We got to come up with a name for this before the
Yep.
next episode, or it's at least by the end of the week. We got to come up with a name for this. But yeah, let's get a name for this for real. This will be up on our YouTube. I might make a podcast for it too. We'll see. But thank you guys for listening in first episode, and we'll be back every night, at least Monday through Thursday.